Easy butter pie crust. Now, it's coming up on Thanksgiving. That's about the time when everyone's family comes into town, which is when most people are making pies. Unfortunately, most people's families are incredibly high maintenance, as are the holidays, but the good news is this pie dough does not have to be. So first thing you need, some flour. Keeping with the low maintenance, we're not gonna weigh our flour. This is a pie crust, you don't need to weigh it. However, measuring your flour like this in a bowl where you just toss the flour in is a little bit more accurate than if you just dig your measuring scoop into that bag of packed flour. However, if you do that, I won't tell anyone. Measure it in, dump it out. We need 1.25 cups. It's just an all-purpose flour. Okay, to that flour, we are going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1.5 teaspoons of sugar. Great, just give that a whisk. So this recipe is going to make 1 pie crust. So this would be like for the bottom of the pie, or if you want to do a crumble. So if you need another piece to go on top, go ahead and double this recipe. All right, we've got flour, we've got salt, we've got sugar. Next we need a fat. Okay, so in the freezer, this is 1 stick or 1/2 cup of butter. So you can totally make pie dough in a food processor, but why wash that extra dish? It's just so much easier to do by hand. So you can either cube up your butter, but this is a trick I love. Take your butter, freezing it helps a little bit. If you don't have time to do that, you can totally just use it cold out of the fridge. It does need to be cold though. Grate it on a box grater. Okay. We're not anywhere near April Fool's yet, but I'm just waiting for the day that someone comes in and mistakes this grated butter for cheese and takes a big bite of it. All right, so you've got your grated butter here. Again, still very cold. With pie crust, we want to work quickly. The key to a flaky pie crust is cold ingredients. Because as the pie crust is baking, the steam from those cold ingredients is gonna rise up and create all those flaky layers. Okay, so just really get in there with your hands and mush that butter into the dough. And again, we're going quickly because our hands are warm. We wanna keep this cold. Awesome. So right now we've got just like some tiny bits in there mushed into the flour. That's perfect, that's all you need, is just mostly incorporated. You can dust off. We're going right back in, so don't get too crazy with the cleaning. Next, we're gonna add ice water. Don't get any ice cubes in there, that will not do you any favors. Starting with 4 tablespoons. Is that 3 or 4? I've lost count. We'll say 4. Okay. And just kind of mix it in. So at this point, we are developing gluten. We develop gluten when you add water and agitation to flour, both of which we are doing right now. Great, this is coming together. It's a little bit shaggy still. We're gonna add just a little bit more ice water. A little bit more to pick up those things on the bottom. Great. So we're not really kneading this so much as we are trying to smoosh it together. So once we've got mostly a dough ball like this, scrape it out and just go ahead and pick up those pieces. I'm gonna rotate, smush it together. If you feel like your surface is pretty sticky, totally dust a little bit of flour on there, that's fine. Okay, so again, we're not trying to knead, we're just trying to pick up all these pieces. So from here, I'm just gonna pat it into a little bit of a disc. Perfect. We're gonna wrap this in plastic wrap, and because we've developed the gluten, if we tried to roll this out right now, it would just spring back, never let us roll it out. So we have to let those gluten strands relax and come back down. Wrap it in plastic wrap, throw it in the fridge to keep those ingredients cold for at least 20 minutes, or you can leave it in there overnight. You can totally make this ahead. All right, our pie dough's been chilling for about 20-25 minutes. That should be plenty of time for those gluten strands to relax, which means we can roll it out. So, keeping with the cold ingredients, I just threw a Ziploc bag with some ice on my counter here to just chill down the surface. So if at any point throughout the rolling out process your butter starts to get melty, your dog has a issue with whatever and you have to go run after it, just throw your pie crust back in the fridge, let it come back down till it's cold. All right, so before we take this pie crust out, pie dough, It's gonna be pie crust, you know, whatever. It's a little bit of flour. You don't want a ton. Find the edge of the plastic wrap. A little bit of flour on top. And then just go ahead and flour your rolling pin as well. All right, couple tricks for rolling out pie crust. Okay, we've got it here, we've got it started. Go to the middle, just do a firm press, roll out. You'll come in with your bench scraper, rotate that pie crust. Okay, come in from the middle, out, repeat. This keeps your pie crust from sticking once you get it all the way rolled out. And it helps you maintain an even circle as well. A little bit more flour. I can see some good chunks of butter in here. That's great, that's awesome. Good, big chunks are no problem. It's gonna be a big, steamy, flaky pocket once it hits that hot oven. And just with rolling, try and keep your pressure even all the way across. It's like I've taught some kids to do pie crust and they haul on it for the first few seconds and they just completely let it pressure at the end and they get this like ripple effect in their pie crust. It's like sand dunes. They're usually still happy with it, but you know, not ultimately the goal. We're getting close in that thinness we're looking for. Up, see if some dough comes off there, just give yourself a little bit more flour. No problemo. It's a good rule of thumb for pretty much, well, almost all dough that you're working with. If it's coming off on your hands, it usually needs a little bit more flour. You'll notice too with my rolling, I'm never going from one end all the way across. Just start in the middle, go away from you. Boom. Okay, that's about the thinness we're looking for. It's not see-through, but it's about, you know, yay thin. Okay, so get your pie plate. Couple different types of pie plates that you can use. There's glass, there's ceramic, there's metal. I've used cast iron pans before. Some things to know. Glass conducts very even cooking. However, it can, especially with a homemade pie crust, cause your pie crust to slide down a little bit. Anything dark, this is a dark pan, it's gonna make your crust brown a little bit more on the bottom. Cast iron pan, I only use in a pinch because it will get your pie really, really brown. But it's fun to look at, pie in a cast iron. Okay, you don't need to grease this pan. There's plenty of fat in your pie dough here. So this is a fun trick. Roll it up and unroll it. And just situate it a little bit. Any pieces that came apart, you can just kind of pinch back together. And we want to work quickly before the butter gets too warm to work with. So we're gonna crimp the edges before we do anything else. So start with a good big piece here. Take your thumb, your finger, come in and press just like that, okay? Up to the side, come in, crimp. All the way around. If you have a pie crust with a ton of overhang, or if you maybe rolled yours out a little bit more, you can trim it off first. But this one was just about the perfect amount to give us just a little bit of extra to do this crimp with. If you're not into crimping, and again, keeping it with easy, just take a fork and score it all the way around. It'll still look great, it'll still taste great, and that's really all that you can ask out of a pie. If you get a little crack like we've got here, I'm just gonna come over to a piece that we had extra on, snip it off, stay up there in your crimp, and put some extra in there. Great, we can come back through those first few crimps that had that whole weight of the pie dough on them and kind of re-crimp them a little bit now that everything's sitting up nice and proper. Just go around, re-crimp anything you weren't super happy with. Beautiful. I think that's great. We're just gonna come along the edge, trim off any extra bits, even it out. Voila, pie crust. Can even mush this back together. Put it in anywhere that you see any little shy bits. So, I'm gonna throw this back in the freezer for just about 5 minutes, let this firm up again. You can skip this step and it'll still be okay, but technically it's gonna help with our blind baking. All right, y'all. This pie crust is looking bomb. And again, this is not a perfect pie crust. This is easy. It doesn't have to be, well, perfect. Like, who cares? This is gonna be fabulous. Okay, so pie crust, a lot of recipes will have you blind bake your pie crust before you put your filling in. And a lot of recipes that don't have you do that should. So if you're ever having trouble with your pie crust being soggy, it is either because you did not blind bake your pie crust or your filling has too much water in it. So we're gonna go ahead and blind bake this. The way you do that Take some parchment, you can also use foil. And you just need dried beans, lentils, you can use loose change that you have laying around. Something heavy that can go in the oven. And you really want to fill it up almost all the way to the top, because you want that pressure. It's going to help keep the sides from sliding down. So go ahead, trim off excess parchment here because it's just going to burn in the oven. Fantastic. Push those lentils up on the edges. It's going to stay right there. I've got my oven preheated to 375 Fahrenheit. We're going to bake this for about 15 minutes or until the edges of the crust start to get lightly brown. All right. So this pie crust was in for about 20 minutes, got some nice golden brown around the edges. You can see on this side where it kind of drooped over a little bit, and actually it leaked a little bit of butter into the bottom of my oven. So if you have any droopers, I'd recommend throw a sheet pan with some foil on the rack below your pie so it catches any of those drips. So got a little bit of brown on here. Now the fun part, carefully remove. Oh, we don't got it. We don't got it at all. There we go. Woo. Okay, take the blind baked out. Take the lentils or whatever driedness you're using. You can see we've got some nice baking around the edges there. We're gonna poke a few holes in this with a fork. That'll keep any steam pockets from coming up. Okay, and this is going back into the oven for about 7 to 10 minutes, somewhere in there, just until we get a little bit more brown on that bottom. All right, so this is our blind baked pie crust. It stopped shrinking, the edges are nice and golden brown. You can tell the bottom's done when it's not really, kind of like that glassy, doughy, see-through look on there. So this looks really nice. This is perfect, it's ready for any filling you wanna throw at it. I just wanna show you guys one more quick trick. Because we already have so much brown around the edges when you go to bake your pie, and pumpkin in this case, whatever filling you're gonna throw in there, it's gonna be 30 to 40 minutes probably. You don't really want the edges getting any browner. So what you can do is just take a couple strips of foil, and you'll do this after you put the filling in your pie crust. Uh-oh, got a wonky edge there. No matter. Make that foil work for you. Just tuck it in, and there you go. And then you are safe to continue baking until that pie is ready to go. That is Easy Butter Pie Crust. Thank you for watching. If you would like the written version of this recipe, you can find that on cleavercooking.com along with the rest of our recipes and video tutorials. If you'd like to keep seeing more videos, hit the subscribe button for me and drop any recipes you'd like to see in the comments. Thanks for watching.